Hello, welcome to Making Moves, where each week myself, Ross Hastings, and Kieran Antill discuss a company repositioning in their market that week. Always selected from a couple of options provided by our team with very short notice, always discussed in under 15 minutes, always unedited, always unscripted, and therefore always supported by some sort of mind-encouraging beverage of some sort. And what are you sipping on today, Kieran?
I'm in the passion fruit zone. Still with hop.
Double hopper today.
Double hop.
I am on the reserve release.
Ooh.
Ember Ale.
Wow.
Which doesn't say it has any nootropics, and also says we're created for moments when the day slows down. When the fire is lit, the air is crisp, and the best conversations happen. So, yeah, good conversations, but maybe I'll be a little drowsy. You might need to pick up the slack.
I like the line made with Galaxy hops.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought for a moment it said Galaxy Hope, which would have been taking us somewhere else.
Galaxy hops sounds like some sort of intergalactic travel.
I was taking
I like that.
Anyway.
All right. Well, today, we'll get stuck into it because it's a biggie. We are discussing Diageo. Oh.
Continue. I'll be right back.
Okay. This is a new one. This is going to test it always unscripted, always unedited. But today we are going to be discussing Diageo and specifically their shift/reversal of strategy after Sir Dave Lewis, Drastic Dave, came in as CEO at the start of the year. Specifically, the fact that he's made public that they are reversing their focus on premium and super premium, which has been kind of their direction, pretty firm direction for the last 10 to 15 years. They're going to tap back into the lower end of the market. This is in the face of pretty significant headwinds when it comes to premium and super premium, a retraction of that category, I think, of around 15%. But also globally, that kind of low cost or budget end of town's kind of or affordable is about 70% of the market now. So interesting. It's another one now that we've discussed where it's not necessarily a new strategy, it's a reversal of strategy. And it comes with it some noise around cutting about $650 million worth of bottom line spend through the use of AI and things like that. They got rid of their North American CMO. There's a number of changes happening, but all in the name of this shift in. We can discuss whether it's a shift in overall positioning, but certainly a shift in like that bullish focus on one area of the market. Of course, Kieran, you've had some exposure to some Diageo brands in your career, so can talk from an inside perspective somewhat on them. But what are your, straight off the bat thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I've bounced around that portfolio, mostly Australia, New Zealand, and the US, and obviously some global work. And it, really, there's a real marketing school within Diageo, which is about brand building, 100%. So on the surface, some of these things you're highlighting kind of almost is that changing? Is that going to go away? I don't think that's going to go away. I think what he's quoted as saying is to be surgical. So obviously across the portfolio here, I don't think it's about Diageo moving away from premiumization. I think it is about cherry picking what is going to lean into those brand building areas, and what is more about returning to categories like the RTDs and the ready to drink sort of premixes in cans.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've come out and said surgical. It's going to be targeted sub brands, new SKUs, and specific markets. So I think there's a really interesting from a repositioning perspective here, and at least in the kind of language we use around that with the anatomy marketing, it is very much starting in that kind of corporate enterprise strategy, what we call the brain space, where it's like, actually, let's take a look at our architecture. Let's take a look at what needs to be solved at a brand or sub-brand level. Let's have a look at what needs to be solved at a product or SKU level. And, what are we looking at in terms of specific markets, as in, what brands, what SKUs, what markets to capture what bit of those markets, which I think if you look at it from that perspective, it seems on the surface to be a smart move, right? We have a global organization with a vast brand portfolio. It seems logical to say, okay, well, how can we flex that portfolio to meet the demands of the different markets that we serve across the globe, as opposed to have one sort of blanket approach around premium, super premium. I think you had said as well that he stated as, I can't remember, you were saying something before we went on air here around his approach from a brand architecture perspective, how they were looking at how they structure globally.
I'm sure it was super intelligent what I said, but
Can't remember.
No, I can't remember the specific things. But I mean, I think that's the thing that. Here's what I'd say: is all the articles flying around about this, they're kind of muddling a lot of things. We're talking about AI. We're talking about real people's jobs. There's this sort of feeling of lot thing. Those cost cutting, I understand, had started. I think the numbers were quoted at sort of 500 million before he joined. So the feeling was we had to change those things. The CEO prior to him was an internal hire. Nothing wrong with that. There's pros and cons with those things, but I guess there's that general idea that you've been sort of indoctrinated, you're part of the system, this idea of the strategy, this is how it works, this is what we do at Diageo, we build these brands, premiumization. And even with that, it's not like every one of their brands is only premium brand, but probably if you're a custodian of one of their brands, you're feeling like, how do we build the equity and equity and equity? This is a total shift at that company strategy level. Obviously, you're changing the personnel, the people themselves. The change of a CEO is always quite drastic. And while I know he doesn't seemingly quoted as saying not liking the name drastic, Dave, they knew what they're buying into, which is someone who thinks operationally, not necessarily against creative work, we're not talking about that, but is going to come in and continue what seemingly they'd already started. And
well, that's the interesting thing, right? They bought into a brand of leader. He's literally got a brand from his work at Unilever and Tesco. And I think seemingly, though, drastic changes at both Unilever and Tesco, but drastic turnarounds as well. I think, from those two case studies, his approach has been highly successful. And to your point, cut costs and focused on the bottom line, but both of those organizations, won Cannes Lions for their creative work during his tenure as well. So it's not like he's just completely ignoring top line and, not focusing on the strength of the brand. So
I would say and this isn't exclusive to Diageo, but global organizations I've worked for, there is extreme waste in the way we've always done things. And, building campaigns for that no one ever runs and needs to runs, and we're talking hundreds of millions, and that's just at the sort of creative production level. There's a bunch of strategy and redoing of strategies and duplicity across the globe. So I think that where we're on a trend of sort of this globalization, it is all like AI is the catalyst for so many things, and so it makes sense. I mean, So I would say that, yes, there's a whole bunch of things that will filter down specifically to brands. There's things around, there will be things about taking brands and heroing brands such as Guinness, I believe, has been sort of noted as one that is like make Guinness a much more global brand. And that requires supply chain more than, it's not that Guinness isn't known, it's just not necessarily invested in and connected to drinking occasions. The premiumization strategy has always been around, and you will find language in companies like this, they'll talk about share of throat, which is always quite a kind of guttural thing, but basically saying people can only drink a certain amount, not just the alcoholic content of a drink like that, but obviously you only drink so many drinks in a particular day. And so therefore a premiumization strategy makes all the sense. Hey, if they're only going to drink 4, let's make them more expensive, and that's where you get the profit. You can convince people to drink. At the end of the day, there's a responsible service of alcohol. So which way do you go? So there's an interesting thing about let's go lower in costs so we get more. You have to beat other competition.
Well, I think that's interesting. Just to pick up on something you mentioned, obviously it's a shift for them, but it's in some ways a return. Not that they've ever been low cost, but when we talk about things like RTDs, they arguably created that category, or at least created the scale of that category with Smirnoff Ice. So there was predecessors to that, but obviously that became synonymous with that category. So they've been there before. It's really since 2010 that they've really dialed in their focus on premium and super premium, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, they're holding multiple strategies at the same time. Certainly from a regional point of view, let alone the brand. So, that's what I feel like. This is really a signal at the top that is changing, and it will filter down and change certain regions more than others, and it'll change certain brands more than others. But it is the loudness of this is more that it signals at the top.
Well, and it's not unique. I mean, P&G famously kind of grappled with this and coined the term masstige, and how can we capture the premium element but at the kind of low cost volumes. For me, I would say that a lot of what Diageo does is that kind of masstige thing already. Like, I mean, Guinness is not exactly top shelf super premium, right? But it's but it's a good quality. It's held up its quality, it's held up its storytelling from the Dublin roots and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's got these real cultural moments around it. But in my mind, that's kind of an example of a masstige.
Well, so if we talk about what does that mean in the world of Diageo, what does that mean in the world of liquor? It is premiumization means the development of rituals, routines, storytelling around all the brands, rather than look at this new format, look at this new pack. This was twice as strong. It's less tactic stuff. So I think if it all becomes a bit of that, look, it's hard to say that the work done previously, even if we saw losses, isn't actually going to support the new work. Because if you've got a new format, that's great, but it's got Guinness in it, or it's got a brand that you smell.
Oh, it's like Stella, right? Reassuringly expensive, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it needs a bit of both. But look, I think it can sound dramatic, and it will be, but we've got mixed in there things like AI that are actually maybe more disruptive than the new CEO position.
Yeah. So what's the wording around that they said they
well, that's a production.
There's $625 million cost-cutting program using AI content production and tighter marketing budgets.
Yeah, I don't know that can be all conflated into exactly the same.
No, exactly. But that, yeah.
They draw that, and what is the marketing budget and how is it defined?
No, I was more around the content production. So obviously, that seems to be something they're leaning into there. So that'll be curious to see. But an organization, hardly an organization with stronger brand codes out there.
When you're an organization, I mean, look, we talk about often, you can have 2 brands for the price of 2 brands. Like Diageo have lots of brands. They therefore have lots of mouths to feed. They therefore have lots of production to make. So unlike a brand that is a single company, single brand, the amount of content companies like that are creating, it is a multiplier. So AI is something they're very interested in.
All right. In 15 seconds or less, will this be another win for Drastic Dave? Is it going to work, or is it not going to work?
Yes, it will. I do not have information to say that, but it will work.
Cheers. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.